Every abusive man believes that you're supposed to do what he says, right? And you saw this belief play out recently when a masked ICE agent shot a woman in the face 3 times and then called her a fucking bitch. She didn't do what he wanted, and his response was lethal. The words that he used are rage aimed at a woman who didn't submit. It was literally the sound of entitlement colliding with refusal. And this isn't about politics. It's about what happens when a man expects compliance and doesn't get it. And not to get off the point, but we give some of those men badges and weapons. But let's focus on the belief, the thing that actually drives the yelling, the sulking, the cheating, the intimidation, and all the threats. When you hesitate, right, you question him, you slow down, you say no, you move in a way that he didn't authorize, something in him flips. And you see it in his face before you even hear it in his voice, right? That anger comes really fast and really sharp. And I'm telling you, it's because you violated a rule that you were supposed to know without ever being told. That reaction is about entitlement. He believes your role as a woman is to respond accordingly to him, right? And when you don't, he experiences it as defiance. Defiance to him, it's not neutral, right? It feels insulting or threatening, disrespectful. And that belief kind of just sits underneath everything that follows this. This is why the punishment escalates instead of actually resolving. It's why explaining is never going to work with a guy like this. This is why the cost of saying no just keeps rising for women. It's very, do you see what you made me do? It's the exact same attitude. Now, I'm Lisa Sonni. I'm a relationship coach. I specialize in abusive dynamics, power and control, trauma bonds, and the belief systems that keep women stuck inside of all of this garbage. Subscribe for more content about abusive men and their tactics. Now, most abusive men, they don't have a badge. They don't have a gun because they don't need one. But they do still definitely expect compliance, right? They expect access when they want it, sex when they want it, for your tone to stay soft and palatable, even when they're cruel, abusive, or yelling. They expect your body to be available, not for you to feel, or at least for you not to display anything like anger, right? Your comfort has to be negotiable to them. And when you violate these rules that they have, the response isn't confusion and it's not curiosity, right? It's anger. It is a reaction to their power being denied. That form of punishment changes, but I'm telling you, the logic stays the same. Yelling, withholding, cheating, threats, intimidation, murder, all of it's designed to force you back into line. This is where the "you made me do it" excuse always just comes right in, right? And let's talk about that. Because if he frames his behavior as nothing but a reaction to you, then this man never has to look at himself. If you had just listened, he wouldn't have snapped. If you hadn't pushed, he wouldn't have yelled, right? You shouldn't have said it that way. That's why this is happening. That framing is not about the truth, right? He just wants to shift responsibility. It's your fault. It turns your normal human behavior, your reaction, into some kind of provocation, right? His choices were just inevitable. It wasn't a choice at all. And over time, you're going to stop asking why he behaves this way and start asking how you can avoid setting him off. And that's always the shift. This isn't an accident. This is training. Now, you hear this most clearly around sex because sexual entitlement, it's one of the most protected forms of male power, right? If you're tired, postpartum, you feel disconnected, you feel overwhelmed, or you're just not in the mood, your refusal to have sex gets reframed as neglect or rejection, right? It's disrespect. You're not doing your job. But then here comes the justification. If you had given him more sex like you should have, he wouldn't have cheated. If you were more available, maybe he wouldn't be so angry, right? If you had just met his needs, then he wouldn't have to look elsewhere. He had no choice, right? And that logic teaches women that men's behavior is something to manage with their bodies. It also teaches men that coercion is a reasonable thing, right? Cheating, betrayal, totally excusable. And the problem isn't that you didn't give enough, because women who comply, submit, give all the sex that the guy asked for still get cheated on, still get mistreated, because it was never only about entitlement. It's about power, always about power. So now you think, if I had just said it differently, this wouldn't be happening. So you're replaying these conversations and you're trying to figure out, like, which word triggered him? What is it exactly that I did or said? And you plan your speech before you even talk to him. You are learning that your own safety kind of depends on this performance, right? If you can kind of explain it right, he'll stay calm. But the problem is that calm is conditional. It only lasts as long as you're compliant. And as I've said, often even when you're compliant, it's not going to work. But as soon as you assert yourself again, bam, punishment returns. This is why it's always going to feel so impossible to fix, because the system rewards his crazy reactions and punishes you for making a normal decision for yourself. So when people say, why didn't she just comply? They're not talking about safety. Let's go back to Renee Good. We don't focus on anything other than why didn't she just comply? It's all over the comment sections. And everyone is making this a story that makes violence feel preventable. They're lying to themselves when they say obedience protects you and that harm only happens when the person sort of fails to do the right thing. You're blaming her. What else is new? My God, that belief is comforting to some people, right? Because it keeps the world kind of orderly. I think people would just rather believe that power is reasonable and kind of predictable. It also just moves responsibility away from the person who chose to harm and murder a woman with 3 bullets in cold blood and onto the woman who didn't behave correctly enough to stop it. It's giving, what was she wearing, isn't it? That's why this question shows up so fast. It makes people feel safer thinking that they can prevent harm, but really you can't when the mindset of the perpetrator is to say, fucking bitch, immediately after murdering her or abusing her or harming her. That same belief lives inside abusive relationships, right? If she had just listened, if she had just stayed calm, if she had just given him more sex, if she had just been easier to deal with, you know how women are, right? Every version of that garbage carries the same BS assumption that compliance is the way to avoid harm. Obedience is just what? The cost of safety? And women try it. They really do. Let's not lie to ourselves. Women comply all the time. They submit. They give more than they have. They make themselves smaller. They prioritize his comfort. He's the center of everything over their own needs. And the abuse still happens because compliance was not the thing holding the violence back. We've all walked face first into the frigging point. This is the part that people don't want to face. If compliance actually worked, then women who complied would be safe, but they aren't. Women who were loyal still get cheated on. Women who devoted their entire marriage still get discarded. Women who are totally sexually available still get humiliated. Women who did everything right? They still get abused. And we treat it like a failure of her effort. And it's actually not. He wanted power, control, and to dominate her. And that is proof that her behavior was never the cause. An abusive man, he abuses because he believes that he's entitled to power over you. So your choices don't actually create that belief. They only determine how much of you that you give up trying to manage him. When people insist that compliance would have prevented harm, what they're actually doing is protecting his entitlement, and it pisses me off. If I seem angry, we all should be angry. We are preserving the idea that power deserves obedience. Violence is a choice, period. And that truth, it's very threatening because it means there's no magic behavior that guarantees anybody's safety. It means women were lied to. The rules that we followed never protected us. And it means the responsibility belongs exactly where abusers don't want it, on the person who chose to harm. Now, Jess Hill talks about this in her book, See What You Made Me Do. She literally names provocation narratives as so central to abuse, and she's so right. In real life, this doesn't sound academic, right? It sounds like him saying, you pushed him too far. It sounds like other people asking what you did first or why she didn't just comply. She doesn't have to comply. Why is that not enough of a reason for people? She didn't have to. It sounds like the world treating male aggression as a force of nature that women are just responsible for figuring out. And everyone teaches women how to avoid male anger, right? We learn that from when we're little girls. Almost nobody teaches men how to manage themselves. But that's how entitlement survives. The belief underneath all of this is so simple. It's so simple. He believes your role is to respond correctly to him, whatever the hell that means, right? He believes that his reactions are just justified responses to your behavior. And this is why men are always going on and on and on about women not taking accountability. They want women to take accountability for him feeling disrespected, right? But what they're implying is that the natural reaction to a man feeling that way is violence, not what else can we expect, right? Not basic human decency, apparently. God forbid. He believes restraint is something that he offers when you behave properly. It's not something that he owes you because you're an autonomous human being. The belief that I'm talking about explains why apologies don't stick. It also explains why knowing this is not going to make anything change. It explains why every single conversation with a man like this feels circular, right? An infuriating double bind. The relationship isn't broken, not at all. It is functioning exactly as designed. It just doesn't work for you. And that was the point. Now, the cost of staying inside this belief system, it's kind of a slow build. You become more careful, a little more quiet. You second guess yourself constantly. You stop trusting your own anger. You stop bringing things up. But that's really the point. You organized your life around avoiding his reactions. These are the eggshells that everyone's always talking about. The belief destroys you, but it shifts how you live your life and how you make decisions to be in relationships and to keep yourself safe. You lose options. You lose parts of yourself, and you don't even notice where the hell they went missing. But I want you to notice how society really backs this up. When violence happens, the first question is always about provocation. What did she do? Why didn't she comply? Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she say it differently? If she had turned the wheel differently. That framing trains women to see harm as a consequence of failure instead of a choice that someone else made, that a man made. It also trains men to expect accommodation. And this message is clear. Male anger is dangerous. Female resistance, it's very risky, right? So you need to adapt accordingly. And this belief doesn't just show up in that shooting of Renee Good. It's the same belief that tells women every single day that if you just do it right, you'll be safe. But that belief is deadly. If this is landing, I want you to pay attention to where non-compliance kind of started carrying consequences in your relationship. Comment and tell me where you see this. Reading those moments often can help other women really recognize their own experience. Now, here's the part that I really just want you to hear so clearly. Violence, whether emotional or physical, is not the natural consequence of dealing with a man. Not all men, right? That's what they say. They want us to say not all men. Well, not all men have a natural consequence of violence. Men imply that it is all the time. They say men can't help it. Men have needs. Men get angry. But that story protects abusers, and it also traps women, and I'm not having it. The truth is so much more simple. He chooses his behavior. He just doesn't want to be held responsible for it. Subscribe. If you want support in making sense of your own life, this is the work that I do privately. I do it in group programs and inside She Rises Collective. That's my online community where you get direct access to me, workshops, special events, small live group sessions, and just to connect with other women who are on the same path of dismantling all of these beliefs and all of this garbage. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to catch you in the next video.